6-year-old girl and a 7-year-old girl, now confirmed, all died as a result of that stabbing attack.
It's like a nightmare, the biggest horrific thing you could ever witness in your life.
At this cordon, we've not just seen a police presence, but people from the community impacted by this attack. Some are laying flowers, others are asking questions about how this could have happened here.
They were there purely for hooliganism and thuggery, in terms of bringing that level of violence and that behaviour onto the streets of Southport. We've seen the very best of this community this morning when they've all been pulling together to support each other, to put right the damage that has been done.
It was like a war zone.
The prosecutor said naming him would reduce the risk of misidentification of others who might be subject to violence, as seen in the recent disorder.
And to be absolutely clear, this is not protest. This is violent disorder.
Anyone who engages in this kind of disorder needs to be clear that they will pay the price.
I was hit in the head by a bottle, actually, but we had our helmets on, so that was all fine. We've seen punches being thrown as well, big scuffles, and this is where we had a lot of the problems earlier. This is the counter-protest. You can see the numbers here really do outnumber those right-wing protesters. This is becoming really... This is the most aggressive we've seen it so far between protesters.
Police now are targets because we've seen police officers in cars come in this direction and have to reverse very quickly when they've been noticed by the groups of people who have headed in their direction. In fact, one of those police cars had their window smashed out.
I utterly condemn the far-right thuggery we've seen this weekend. Be in no doubt, those that have participated in this violence will face the full force of the law.
Downing Street lit up pink again. At the beginning of this week, Sir Keir Starmer no doubt thought that his role this week would be to play a part in the grieving process. That has changed significantly now into what is probably Keir Starmer's biggest first test as Prime Minister. Such is life when you're running the government.
Are we going to end two-tier policing, sir?
What's happening across Britain isn't yet on the scale of the 2011 riots in terms of the number of people involved, but one factor makes it already worse: human targets. The fact that this is fueled by intolerance.
We're here in one sense trying to promote a happy remembrance for those children, and then they're seen on the news, there's other things going on, and It's soul destroying.
But I think, apologies for the language you're hearing, but a sense of anger I think you can hear there.
There are 30 or so riot officers on either side of this main road in the centre of Plymouth. They are doing their best to keep these two groups separate as the tension rises.
Hello, welcome back to another session by Great Beyond Narratives. This video was sourced through Sky News, and today we bring you the topic what's happening in the UK. The United Kingdom is facing a series of riots and civil unrest for 10 consecutive days, impacting numerous towns and cities across the nation. The turmoil originated in Southport following a tragic knife attack that resulted in the death of 3 young girls, leaving the community and the country in shock and mourning. 9-year-old Alice, 6-year-old Bebe, and 7-year-old Elsie in an attack at a Taylor Swift-themed dance class in Southport. 8 other children and 2 adults were also injured. The 17-year-old male, Axel Rudakubana, originally from Cardiff, was apprehended. However, Merseyside Police were prohibited from disclosing his identity due to his age. Online misinformation spread with inaccurate allegation that he was an asylum seeker. There were also claims that he had entered the UK by boat. The previous year, the rumors were further fueled by several far-right figures, including Tommy Robinson, billionaire Elon Musk, who posted about them on social media. Accounts with the name Europe Invasion and End Wokeness also posted false information, reaching millions of identified as a Muslim immigrant and falsely named as Ali al-Shakati by some Russian websites, which is known for fake news. But as it turns out, Axel was born to Rwandan parents in Cardiff and moved to the Southport area in 2013. Has no known link to Islam. False statement, including calls to participate in a protest in Southport the day following the stabbing, were shared and viewed by millions on Telegram and fear regarding the suspect involved in the knife attack. It has fueled outrage and violence. Despite the suspect Axel being charged with multiple counts related to the attack, the riots have continued, with demonstrators targeting spaces associated with migrant and Muslim. In response to the escalating violence, Prime Minister Sir Starmer denounced the actions as far-right thuggery. As the protests gained momentum over the week, a mob of hundreds of rioters sought to break into Holiday Inn Express Hotel, which was being used as accommodation for asylum-seekers. The rioter, fueled by a combination of grief and anger, have resorted to extreme measures such as throwing bricks, setting fire, and attacking mosques and other places of worship. Law enforcement agencies have made significant effort to restore order, resulting in over 400 arrests nationwide. Clashes between rioters and police have occurred in various locations, underscoring the challenges by authorities in managing the situation. Counter-protests have also emerged, drawing larger crowds than the far-right groups they oppose. Courts in the UK are actively sentencing individuals involved in recent far-right riots, which has affected various regions. The judicial response has been swift, with sentencing reaching up to 3 years in prison. At least a dozen people were jailed on Thursday for their part in the riots of the past 10 days, with more expected to be sent to prison today and tomorrow. About 150 charges have been brought over the unrest so far. The woman who initially started the rumors about Axel, the Rwandan guy, is a 55-year-old woman living in Stirling, and she has been arrested and is in custody right now. So that is an introduction to the topic. Shaji.
Thank you very much. I think everyone's seen a gist, a profile of what is actually an overview in regards to what's taken place in the last week. And everyone's heard the introduction. So first of all, I'm going to go to Dr. Furqan Ahmed, Dr. Furqan Ahmed, can you hear me?
Yeah. Hi, Shaji. Hi, Minister. Hi,
Hi.
Maham.
So, as you've seen, and I'm sure you've been following the situation within the UK in regards to what has taken place, what do you think is the reason behind that? Is this something because just to give a background in regards to yourself, you happen to be an immigrant in Europe right now yourself as a first-generation immigrant. On top of that, I think you did your studies and you completed your education from the UK and you went to university there. So I have a few questions in regards to that, and we would like your opinion so the conversation can basically move forward. Are there tiers to this? Is this something which has been boiling for a long time within the UK? Is this something which is one-sided, like all sides are trying to portray? Or is there something deeper going on within the society in the UK and wider in continental Europe, which has resulted in such a situation? Go ahead, Dr. Furqan, the microphone is yours.
Thank you very much, Shah and Mohammed. And I have to say thank you for the invitation. And it's always good to see you guys do what you guys do. I might be a bit rusty because it's been a while since I have been here and having these conversations. Coming back to the topic, I think these sort of cycles happen over the years. And there has been inherent sort of a distrust or they don't like immigrants. I would be very clear. Most of the right wing parties, they or the people who basically support the right wing movements, they don't like immigrants, and they think all their problems are because of the immigrants. And something which basically ignites such events like this one, which I think is basically misinformation by certain people, influencers, social media influencers who basically claimed certain things and ignited these disorderly conducts being happening in the UK. So any sort of ignition that happens that might trigger such things, because the inherent hate and the inherent like prejudice is certainly there. It's not just the UK. It is there in the Europe as well. It's also there in the US.
But do you actually believe that these are just thugs who basically decided to come out one day, or is there a bigger trigger point to that?
The bigger trigger point is the hate, inherent hate. There is a segment in the society which basically thinks that the immigrants are like the immigrants are a problem to their social fabric, and that notion is entrenched in certain segments of the society. So whatever happens which triggers such events, such sort of repercussions or this sort of backlash would happen. Not backlash, it is reactionary, I would say. And then they reacted on a certain situation, on certain informations that was given based on the stabbings that happened, the killings that happened in Southport. So anything that triggers such events, we would see such a response.
Would you say the public was already angry, or it's an event which triggered it, or it was completely incited by certain misinformation? What exactly is going on?
If the community or the society is responsible, they would put the blame on the person doing the act. They would not go and check what's the person's ethnicity, religious beliefs. But the community is not that logical. All around the world, all around the globe, it's not just the UK. Okay, because in diverse societies there would be certain people looking at other ethnicities, other people who are different to them in a very hate is something which is inherent in societies in certain segments, and they would hate on anything which happens. And if that person is from an immigrant background, person from a color, following a religion which is being talked about in a certain way, they would react in this way, and that triggers them to do certain things. But the hate and the prejudice is always there in the society. It just needs to be ignited by an event.
So you're basically putting it down to mob mentality, to be exact. Is that what you're saying?
Mob mentality is there, but that's secondary. I'm pointing at the prejudice, because the prejudice is there since a lot of years. Even when the Britishers came to South Asia, they had a prejudice that people around here, they don't mean much. We still remember like the famine of Bengal, what Churchill wrote in his notes in a file. So we know what they used to do. We have a history. We have documentation of what they
No,
did.
I understand.
That prejudice is there.
But there is a difference between imperialist Britain and Britain of 2024. Obviously, it's not imperialistic and it's not run by a monarchy only. And there have been rules and regulations which have kind of over the years, after decades of immigration, things have changed. I myself, for example, consider myself to be a British national, a British person. I consider the United Kingdom to be my country. And that's something, and somewhere where I grew up, I am obviously attached to the roads. I'm attached to the people, regardless of their ethnicity. I have friends who happen to be white, black, Chinese, Muslims, Jews. And obviously, I would not consider majority of the Caucasian people or the British people who I deal with in majority of my daily life when I'm in the UK, or am in touch with even when I'm not in the UK, to be racist at all. I would not consider the dealings which I have with them to be any different to somebody of my own ethnic origin, or somebody who is from somewhere else. So yes, I would agree that there are elements of racism within the UK, but at the end of the day, we have to be very, very clear that this is a segment of society, and this is not inherently a British trait, at least after the colonization ended post Second World War, because now this is the fourth generation within the UK who's kind of grown up, produced children. They don't know any other country besides the one which they're living in. They can be black, they can be white, they can be Chinese ethnically, they can be Jewish, they can be Muslims, they can be any Christians. For example, if you just look at a city like London, or the mayor happens to be of Pakistani origin, on top of that, he at the end of the day has been elected by majority Caucasian people, because the ethnic dominance of Asians or immigrants or children of immigrants is not the majority in London. So there are other aspects with that. I'll go to Aditya, and then the conversation can basically proceed. Aditya, you've heard what Dr. Furqan has said. As an outsider, and from the perspective of somebody who happens to be from India, with a lot of interest being garnered in this, and specifically the Islamic aspect or the Muslim aspect, which happens to be prevalent in this entire situation. How are you viewing this? And what is your opinion in regards to what's already been said and what's actually unfolded in the last week or so?
So like, you know, there's this one popular British podcast by this, like, two people. One of them is the ex-member of Parliament from UK. I can't recall the name of that podcast, but he said a very interesting thing about the, like, you know, the rioters and the protesters. So it's not one homogeneous group of people who were rioting or protesting there. One of them is clearly the fascist who doesn't care, like, you know, who is responsible and who's not. They just don't like the other. They don't like the brown people, or for the matter, the black people, but it's usually the brown people. It's not even about their religion or their, like, you know, ethnicity. If you're not white or Christian, then you are, like, you know, it's a good enough reason for them to hate you because you're not white, Christian, right? So there is this one group, one part of that group. The other is the part which is very disappointed by the state, which thinks that, you know, the state has let us down. The same problem that, you know, even we have discussed before, that one group possibly, like, you know, who thinks that, you know, uh, the immigrants are taking our jobs, they are taking our work. So there's this second group, and possibly, like, you know, third or fourth group. One of them is, like, you know, a rebel without a cause. Like, you know, you just see something happening and you want to be a part of it. So I think, like, you know, there are people with, like, you know, different ideas who joined these protests, and eventually, like, you know, it turned into violence because you have, like, you know, people who were bigoted. They were, like, you know, looking for somebody to be, like, you know, blamed to, and like, and it's a honest thing is that, you know, it's a growing trend, not just in UK, but the entire, especially the Western European part, where there is a lot of, like, you know, growing animosity towards the immigrants. It's growing since, like, you know, probably last lot more in the last 10 years probably. You see a rise of right wing populist throughout the Western European regions, even in some parts of the Eastern Europe. But it's a growing trend, and it's a sad thing that, you know, it's not just about, like, you know, doing the right things to manage the issue. For example, if somebody comes to me and tells me that, you know, there are issues with the immigrants who are arriving to, like, you know, countries like UK, and there needs to be a thorough, like, you know, background check, or, like, you know, how do we manage the immigration? Is the level of immigration, can we, like, you know, manage the amount of immigrants that are arriving in our country? So you can have a proper discussion, but it's not about the discussions. It's a lot of false news being spread, especially with, like, you know, the rise of internet. People have their, like, you know, small groups which validate each other. Even if you are a Nazi, literal Nazi, on today on Twitter, you will find like-minded people who will support your ideas, who will agree with you, and who will validate your bigotry, your hate, your racism. So it's so sad to see, but yeah, we can even further discuss about, like, you know, how some of these right-wing influencers like Elon Musk or Andrew Tate kind of people, like, you know, put kerosene to the fire, igniting it further, right? And Tommy Robinson, yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Hold on. So I think
Shaji, would you play the and you?
You're not audible. Are you saying something, Maham?
Yeah, I think my internet is acting really weird today. So, Shaji, can you play that Andrew Tate video?
Can you give a bit of a background in regards to
Where
what
he's
it
talking
is?
about this whole immigration thing.
Okay.
So Andrew Tate have been very actively making statements about this whole situation, and he's been Shaji.
So an undocumented migrant decided to go into a Taylor Swift dance class today and stab 6 little girls. That's right, somebody arrived in the UK on a boat. Nobody knew who he was. Nobody knows where he's from. The media is, of course, hiding the fact that this is a 17-year-old male. They don't want to highlight how ridiculous it is that we allow military-aged males, combatants, to flood our shores. I don't see any protests in the UK. I don't see anybody complaining. Nobody's outside of the school. Nobody's outside the police station. The soul of the Western man is so broken that when the invaders slaughter your daughters, you do absolutely fucking nothing. And as for the BBC, well, they made an article 3 days ago saying Andrew Tate is dangerous to women for his toxic masculinity. I wonder if they're going to do an article about how dangerous it is to women to allow all these unchecked migrants in who stab little girls to death. Or probably not. Perhaps they want men to be so weak and so cowardly that they don't like Andrew Tate. And they're the kind of man who doesn't complain or put up any kind of fuss when little girls get killed. Toxic masculinity, as they deem it, are the kind of men who are unhappy with and find this fucking garbage unacceptable. There is no reason to let these clowns into our country. Let me explain something to you. If you will never pull the trigger, you will never have a border. If you are not prepared to use live ammunition, you're never going to have a border. You can use water cannons, you can use the Coast Guard, you can put up a fence, you can do X, Y, Z, but they're going to keep coming. And they don't give a shit about murdering any of you. Who says they're not mentally ill? Who says they're not from a war zone? Who says they're not sent by a foreign government? You have no idea who these fucking people are. And we'll be told, well, you can't pull the trigger, that's immoral. We can't protect our borders, that's immoral. I would argue it's far more immoral to let them in and kill citizens of the United Kingdom, to kill little girls. Because those little girls never stood a fucking chance. They never stood a chance of survival. Whereas if we make it clear we're going to defend our border with deadly...
Okay, so that was Andrew Tate. I hope the South Asian fans of Andrew Tate are really happy with all the things he's saying. Being so ignorant, he doesn't even know that the guy who actually murdered those girls was not even an immigrant or a Muslim. But he took the opportunity, and even after following his profile, I didn't see once that he was apologetic about it. He was okay with spreading misinformation and fake news. Elon Musk is talking about how two-tier policing and stuff. And I was watching this interview of Tommy Robinson. The guy is unapologetic. When he was asked about how the guy turned out to be a Christian and a British citizen, he tried to turn it into how BBC and The Guardian lies about everything. Just for your information, I want to let you know that Tommy Robinson right now have fled from the UK because he was supposed to show up in the court over him not following the court order when he showed his documentary about the Syrian youth, which was completely false. So he fled the UK to run from the authorities, but he's doing what he's doing. He's appearing on far-right media everywhere and giving his narrative. And it's just all of these people are just, even though the truth is out, but you can, if Tommy Robinson is saying that BBC and Guardian are all lying, of course, all the far-right think that they're all lying as well. And just so you know, there's been another attack in Stirling, which Tommy Robinson tried to make another Muslim attack on a Christian woman, but turns out the attacker was a white male. So a lot of misinformation and how social media, I want to talk about this, how the algorithm and how social media and all these people like the Europe invasion and wokeness are taking advantage of this situation. And like you just saw what all the things Andrew Tate said. I mean, the guy is literally talking about unaliving people. Like it makes no sense why he's being so. And he's in the next video, he's talking about how he's so peaceful because he's part of both communities. It's just it's so hypocritical, honestly speaking, and it's sad that all these people are just trying to. I want to show some statistic right now. These are statistics by the Justice Ministry of the UK. It was made in 2022, as you can see, and these are all the troubles that all the crime and stuff in the UK happening, and you can see for yourself. So the situation is that all these people taking advantage of all these situations through social media, misinformation. How the algorithm is helping it as well. I mean, you start watching far right stuff, they start giving you far right stuff. And what do you think about this role social media plays in this whole situation? You know, these big personalities that find your stories from rags to riches, but once you're famous, you have a responsibility. And the least you can do is when you spread false information, you can at least apologize for not being truthful. So what do you think? What do you think about this whole situation, the role of social media and all these personalities in this whole situation, who are, instead of trying to contain it, they're trying to fire it up even more?
Shah, you're not audible. Can you turn on your mic?
Shaji,
I think there's some water which holds the notion whether actually there's no smoke without any fire. So I do believe that in some things which Andrew Tate has basically stated and what Tommy Robinson is saying, they're only getting fuel for such kind of situation is because there has been an element of extremism in a minority population within Muslims, Black community, as well as South Asians at different proportions respectively. And obviously, those things like when the Palestinian protests, for example, occurred, or just recently across the pond in continent of Europe, you've just had Taylor Swift concerts being cancelled because apparently there was a planned terrorist attack which was going to be taking place on behest of somebody who was a supporter of the ISIS, the group ISIS, which happens to be extremely well, we all know what that is all about. So we have to be very, very careful where there are bad apples within the Caucasian far right groups or the mainstream people. I would not say that I would not put Andrew Tate in the category of extremists. I would rather put him in a category of clout chasers. I believe he's a social media clout chaser of the biggest level, where he's trying to or going to make statements which are just going to get him views without having any consideration in regards to what his words are going to do on the streets. And we've just seen that. And there's no excuse for that. But when it comes to people like Tommy Robinson or the majority of people who belong to the far right, those people, again, when you look at these people, what you will realize is that, okay, it's a country which is dominated in terms of population, where the majority happens to be Caucasian. So you saw a lot of these people, but on the streets. But when there's about Palestinian, for example, there in recent times, we saw what the Khalistanis did when they were holding protests against India within the UK, within Canada, all over Europe. They were just as big vandalists as you will ever come across. You saw certain Muslims carry out similar kind of attacks where they would basically go out and threaten people and destroy public property during the Palestinian things. And we need to be very clear in regards to that. All communities are going to basically have such people, and you're going to have a proportion of every community or every religion who's going to be racist or is not going to like another belief system, and they're going to come forward. Just like, for example, I think it was only last year, again, this took place in Leicester, where there were far-right Hindu extremists versus thugs from the Muslim community who basically had an argument, and they went on a rampage on the road. I think we need to differentiate in terms of how many layers there are. But having said that, what is very, very important, we have to realize that we're living in a time of economic crisis. Cost of living is high. People are not getting jobs. People are going to take their frustrations out on something. But again, we must not forget, and again, this addresses what Dr. Furqan was saying as well. And after, if Maham has something to add to the conversation, after she's spoken, I would like to go to Dr. Furqan to elaborate further in regards to this as well, because he mentioned that the British people outrightly, in his experience, do not like them. How he sees the entire situation. Would he not consider that a proportion of ethnic minorities or ethnic or minority religious groups have the same feeling? So Maham, go ahead, and then we'll move to Dr. Furqan.
All this reminded me of something. I know I'm going to be the devil's advocate here. There is a certain number of our Muslim community that have made kind of their own neighborhood in the UK, who believes in not integrating among the British people like the other communities have done. And they're, honestly speaking, they are involved in criminal activities and drugs and stuff like that. Do you think they have some role to play in all that situation? What do you think, Furqan?
No, pardon, what was the question? What was the question?
My question is that there is a certain community, there is a certain part of our community which have made their own slums, neighborhood, and they do not believe in integrating with the British community, the white people. And they are involved in a lot of criminal activity. They're third generation, and they're involved in criminal activity. Do you think they have a part to play in all this situation? Because, you know, we all know about the grooming gangs, right?
Yeah, that is certainly there. You can't deny. I mean, no one can deny that. Okay, because there have been reports and there have been reported incidents on grooming gangs, especially in Yorkshire area, and that is certainly there. No one can deny that. And the ghettos and the close-knitted communities that the immigrants have, that is also something which is quite evident, not just in the UK, in the US, all of Europe. Right now, the immigrants are coming from South Asia. For certain decades, they have been South Asians, Africans. And before that, there were certain other communities as well, and they also had ghettos. And that's where the term comes from, ghettos. So that is certainly there. But it's not because they have these structures or these social norms or whatsoever. It's because there is an inherent hate in a certain segment of the society, not all the society. I would again rephrase it because I think I wasn't clear enough. There is a certain segment of society.
Yes, Furqan bhai, I understand. I understand that, but you have to admit that all these rioting and everything, this should be a lesson for the Muslim community. You cannot just say that the white people or these far right people are entirely wrong, right? There is some problems there, and they need to address it.
No. Okay. One comment about because it would be a bit late, but like I would say what Andrew Tate was saying, it's ironic because he's also an immigrant where he's living. He's in Romania or East European, so he's also an immigrant, calling out immigrants because he's not essentially from East Europe. Okay, so it's ironic how people basically cash on these bandwagons because it's a hot topic right now, and he knows something like controversial, whatever he says would get him more traffic, and he's doing that. What Shah was saying, that is essentially true because he is looking for traffic on his channel and to be relevant right now. Okay. But coming back to what the West is doing, would you be all right be sort of putting Andrew Tate's sort of big statue right next to Big Ben or Westminster Abbey? No, because the opinions he holds doesn't grant him a place right next to a landmark in London. But there are statues of people who have killed millions and they are still there. So they're not doing enough to teach people in their countries what the atrocities they have done in the past.
Can Dr. Furqan, I would completely agree with you, and there should be lessons to be learned in regards to that, and there is no doubt about that. But is that why you believe the riots actually occurred? Is that what you believe?
That's the crux of the matter, in my opinion, because they haven't been taught, because they think they are coming, because they view the immigrants in a way that they are lesser beings. And that's the wrong view, and that's the view due to which the atrocities happened in the past.
Would you say this applies to majority of the British white Caucasian people, or does this apply to only a minority of the racist of a certain background?
Sure. It's like I said, it's a minority. It's a segment of a society. But are they doing enough to basically highlight what the problem is? They are not. The answer is they are not. They still have statues of people who have been involved directly in doing a lot of atrocities. European countries with a colonial past, including the UK, they are not doing enough to teach.
So would you say somebody decided to on a night out on a pub where there have been incidents reported, and on their way back they just decided that, okay, because I saw a statue of Lord this, that, and the other, that's why I'm going to basically go and beat up, burn a mosque, or basically attack a place where a hotel where immigrants might be staying or asylum seekers might be staying. Do you think that is what angered somebody like that? Because I certainly don't believe that.
Shah, it's an inherent social issue. Okay, and if these history lessons are not taught in a way to make them realize what they have done in the past, they would be making the same mistakes over and over again. Okay, because there is no intervention in their behavior coming in. Even then, back then, do you think what Churchill did? I'm talking about Churchill. He has a huge statue with the Chester long coat right next to Westminster Abbey. Okay, was it like what he did or his decision, was it all the UK back then? No. All the Britishers? No. It was his decision. Why he did it? That thinking is prevalent even right now, because they are not being taught, like, treat everyone equal, color is nothing. These principles are not being taught in the schools, and what they basically did in the past was wrong. I would give an example about Germany. There are certain social issues even here. These racial profiling and issues. It's prevalent everywhere in the world. But they took a history lesson, and they have it in the next generation coming in. They take responsibility for what they did even now. And that I don't see in English speaking countries, especially in the UK, even in the US, for certain reasons. They also did certain things. They don't hold themselves responsible. They justify, or they just would go blind.
Would you not say that? So you believe everything has to do with history in regards to what's occurred in the last week and a half?
Because it would produce degenerates over and over again. It's a vicious cycle. It would produce degenerates over and over again. 20 years from now, again, something like this would happen. It's cyclic. If you look at such events, they happen over and over again. Have they stopped? No. Would they stop? No. It happens in Pakistan as well. Like, the minorities are treated in a similar way. And just because they don't take responsibility for the ills they have done in the past to the minorities in Pakistan, they wouldn't learn anything.
That's an interesting opinion, Aditya. I would like to come to you in regards to that. Would you agree that with Dr. Furqan that what's happened is due to that entire situation?
Like, when Furqan started speaking about this topic, like, it seemed very irrelevant to the discussion, but the way he connected the dots in the end, like, I'll say it's not the full truth, but there is truth to his statement. Like, it's a cyclical thing. 100% I agree. There is no doubt that this issue is cyclical, and until there's a term very popular in the leftist circles. We call it like decolonizing. Until you decolonize your society, until you believe that the British colonization was inherently was to basically civilize the uncivilized society, or Churchill did no wrong, and he was a hero, and there's no other side to his hero worship, or the love of the royal family. There is some there is some truth to it. I won't deny it, and until and unless you accept your past, there is not a complete closure to a history which is based on they don't get to learn a lot about the problems or the crimes of the British Empire, and they don't get taught that, right? And it was even very strange for me when an Indian scholar such as Shashi Tharoor spoke about it, and the education system of the British, where 70% of the kids don't even learn a word about the colonization of the British. They are so ignorant. Unlike the Germans do teach their kids about their their past, about Hitler, and their oppression of the minority. So those people are a lot more empathetic. It's not that Germany is perfect, but Germans are better learned about their past.
Just a small comment. The term ghetto also originated from that era. It wasn't just a recent term. It was like from that era.
So yeah, I get it. So I think it's part of the problem. It's portion of the problem, but it's not the entire reason. So I think this is happening, and the cyclical part also I agree, and it can be it can be reduced, but it will eventually happen again. Even if you try to decolonize the population, still after some time they will be radicalized, and there will be a uptick in the hate crimes and all these things. Coming back to my understanding of the problem, I think let me give you a beautiful example from human neurology or human evolution. So humans never thrive for truth. It's a scientific fact, it's a psychological fact. Humans never thrive for truth. They only thrive to be a part of a tribe. Humans are tribal, inherently tribal in nature. Let me give you an example of it. Humans never cared about the truth, they cared about their tribe. I can give you a statement. If it's true, it doesn't matter if it's true. If it is supported by your tribe, you are more likely to believe it. For example, a very basic truth like COVID-19. There is a section of the society, a tribe, which still believes that COVID-19 doesn't exist. And I personally have lost people to COVID-19. I personally know 4 people, healthy people, regular people, who lost their lives to COVID. I saw my father, my mother, my sister who got COVID, got they got ill. 2 of them lost taste sensation of taste buds for a week. I got really ill for 3 days. Not really ill, but I had fever for 3 days. Very strange fever. My body was totally weak for 3 days. I've experienced COVID, and still there are people in this society because of this tribal nature doesn't believe it existed, even if they saw it around them. There is a section of people who doesn't believe in COVID vaccination just because of this tribalistic nature. So the same thing is with the right wing or the far right wing. I won't even call it the right wing. A good thing that came out of this is that even the conservatives who are trying to be a little center right, trying to stay away from the far right reform party of Nigel Farage, at least they're trying to distance themselves away from this thuggery or this looting and whatever that happened, which is a good thing, because I don't believe in the long run it's a solution. And the ideas floated the two-tier policing system. There are hundreds of thousands of people working in the police, and you can't find one people who with surety can tell you that of course we work in two-tier system. You can't find people who will literally tell you. If it existed you would know, but it doesn't exist. This two-tier policing system is a lie spread by the far right just to justify that the whites are treated differently from the migrants. Somehow the migrants are given special privileges. They are staying in beautiful 5-star hotels. Somebody believes that they're given a monthly allowance of 5,000 pounds or whatever. It's all bullshit. It's all lie. But if you want to believe it, if your tribe believes in it, doesn't matter if it's true or not. Your mind will actually make you believe that it is true, just because of our tribal mindset and evolution.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Maham, you've heard what Aditya's basically said. Would you like to add something to it?
So I have something really relatable about what Furqan and Aditya just said. I'm going to play the video. I picked it from TikTok. I'm going to play it right now.
So let me tell you a story about this immigrant, okay? And this guy is a real piece of work. So he moved to London about 11 years ago on a 2-year working holiday visa. But this jammy son of a gun managed to find a job that actually wanted to sponsor him to stay, essentially taking a job from a UK citizen. Now, I know, it gets worse. This absolute chancer not only wriggles his way back in, but he meets a beautiful British citizen and he marries her. And you wouldn't believe it. After 5 years, this foreigner is granted indefinite leave to remain. And he's also just started the paperwork to become a UK citizen. That's right, this job-stealing immigrant marries into the country and will soon get to call himself British. And I know that because that jammy job-stealing, wife-kissing, wheeling-dealing son of a gun is me. There are certain people who hear that story and scoff. They tell me that I'm not an immigrant. No, because I don't meet the criteria at all, since I'm a straight white male from an English-speaking country that was colonized by the British Empire. I am, in fact, not an immigrant at all. I'm an expat. And because I'm actually an expat, I get special dispensation to have my immigration status white, with a cheeky wink and a grin. I mean, you Kiwis are basically British anyway, so I'm told. So, out of an abundance of curiosity, I researched how far up my family tree I have to climb to find any relative who was born in the United Kingdom. So I was obviously born in New Zealand, and so was my dad, and so was my grandfather, and so was my great-grandfather. In fact, I needed to go back to the 19th century to find someone in my family who was born outside New Zealand, much less in the United Kingdom. So, yeah, I'm an expat of Aotearoa, New Zealand. So I make this point to point out the glaring hypocrisy of those rioting across England, those who wear their bigotry as St. George's flags and swear that this is a simple protest about immigration policy, and have the audacity to tell me that my kind of immigration isn't immigration at all, but rather a glorified homecoming that took 5 generations to unfold. So spare me these mental...
So the white people are expats, and some others with darker skin tone are immigrants.
That's
Well,
exactly what somebody said about, like, the guy who was running for American presidency, Vivek Ramaswamy. A literal, like, Republicans said that, I won't vote for you. I like your politics, but I won't vote for you because you're not American. And he was, like, awestruck by that statement. And he was like, I was born here. And she was like, you're not white. Literally, that's what it needs to be for you to be, like, for some people to be acceptable to that crowd. And he just started, like, randomly laughing about it, because he knew that, how many racists there are in that right-wing party. And you can't ignore it. Even the right-wing folks try to, like, avoid this conversation, because they know that, there are literal fascists who are voting for them. So they'll just try to, like, ignore those statements or those conversations, because they know that, these people exist in their voter base.
But Aditya, the question is that I agree there is racism, and we've spoken about it for years and years, but at the end of the day, we cannot basically portray the entire society as that, can we? Otherwise, for example, if you see what's taken place in the UK in the last week and a half, these people were completely outnumbered by the racism rallies, which were happening side by side, and majority of those people happen to be white as well. What would you say to that?
And I think it's a great thing. That means there are, like, good people, well-intentioned people who understand that, the problem. Okay, there is a problem, like, I won't deny that, there is, like Furkan Bhai pointed out, the ghettoization of several communities. There are some communities who are not that well off, who are living there. There is, like, of course there exists these problems, but your ideas should be solution based, not, like, trying to radicalize the population, but trying to, like, look for solutions.
You can't be looking for solutions from people who just don't like those people. If your idea is that, I don't like the brown person, that means he's not looking for a solution. He's looking for probably, trying to, you should leave our country. And if your position is to, leave my country, then there is no argumentation. It's not constructive argument. It's just one way bigotry. If you are actually looking for a solution, of course, invest money into these, ghettos. Try to better educate those people. Try to, create, before we started the stream, we were discussing about how Singapore tried to manage it, right? The quota based system in a particular area. Try to be more, uh, make a area more inclusive of, different ethnicities. Bring more people into that area who comes from different backgrounds, so people try to learn about each other, like you know come up with better education institutions. Try to, even if some areas are not, left behind, try to inject some money into it to, improve the situation. So that's the solution based ideas. If the bigotry has no solution to this problem, if you think that, being racist toward them can bring you any good, then, I think good luck to you. It's not going to get anything out of it, just more further hate from the other side.
Yeah, I completely agree with you on that aspect.
But I have a question. Aditya.
Go.
Because people go to England, all of these community, they go there, they settle there because, first world country and all that, America and England. My question is, do you think the situation would have been better if white people and all these black people started coming to South Asia? Do you think we would treat them any different? I don't think so.
When we talk about, if we would have treated them any better, and I actually genuinely believe larger proportion of the white American or the white English population is less racist than us South Asians. Genuinely, I believe that, at least India, it's very casteist, it's very classist, it's very, colorist even, including some people I know. So of course, it's not that just because we are brown we are better than them. Of course we are not. Right, we are not better than them. Look at what Pakistan is doing to, even their fellow Muslim brothers from Afghanistan. They are, if they're not, if not equally, then more racist towards the Afghans. The, what people say about the Afghans working in Karachi, right? The kind of statements being passed about the Afghans working in Karachi or other parts of Pakistan. We know that, how racist we can be towards people who are very similar to us in fact, right? Look at India, how, how racist we are towards our minorities, and even, people who come from supposedly lower castes, right? There are, derogatory terms that we use for those castes, and those are still prevalent today. 95% of the marriages in India are in the same caste marriages. People will, will rather marry you into a family that they hate than they will allow you to marry somebody of a lower caste. So our culture is more racist or more casteist than America or UK is. But it's not about being morally superior to them. It's about, accepting a problem and trying to work on it.
I have a comment. I think the parallels or the comparisons drawn between like the East and the West, I think it's unfair to draw parallels because like if we talk about India, Pakistan, 80 years, not much of a history. If we draw parallels, and also uh, uh, like the morality chapters which have been going on since ages, like how the world should work and how a society should work comes from the West. That's a doctrine that comes from the West, not the East. So if we see like a system which claims like they operate really fairly and it's not operating fairly, so we should talk about that because there are inherent flaws in the system in the East, and we all agree to that notion. There is no two ways about it. But if a system claims like it's really fair, why it's not being fair right now? That's the question. And drawing comparisons, it's unjust, I would say, because we
Because
have
South
a lot
Asians
of
are the
social.
most racist people.
Uh, but that also comes with
Vidya,
a history
I have
of
a little problem with that
colonization. I would
statement.
say
A little, even
that
though
that
I understand that they're
yes.
racist,
Ma'am, we
but
are extremely racist.
But
Extremely.
that also comes from
no. There is a difference. No. There is a difference.
no, one thing, Maham, one thing. Racism comes from if there are races, different diversities living together. In South Asia, that's not the case. In the West, yes, because immigration is a process that has been happening for 7 8 decades after the Second World War, and in South Asia, it's a sort of a uni-ethnic sort of a community.
More
The
homogeneous
Yes,
than not.
yes. So you can't define racism right now in South Asia essentially, but there are social issues in the East, but they are different. Racism is inherently in the West, where there are very heterogeneous sort of a community, and that's because of the immigration that happened post World War II, because they needed labor, and that's also happening right now. They need certain number of specialized labor. There is a labor shortage in the West, and they would do that. They want that, and they want certain specialities to come in and then fill certain positions, and their population would not like that, but they don't have any choice. Even the right wing governments coming in, they can't stop immigration just because they know it would not be good for the business. So they have a certain number of immigrants coming into their countries each year to fill those positions. So they have to safeguard their rights. What was the government doing when these rights were happening? That's my question. A. B. What they would do post this event. That's certainly what we need to see. Because if they don't do anything, they are saying, okay, they would, anyone doing anything illegal would go to jail, or like they would prosecute them. Not enough. They need to change the system inherently. This inherent hate and inherent prejudice, this needs to be addressed. Because otherwise, these events would recur again and again.
Mike Shah.
Shaji, you're mute.
I think we should go to our final comments. I think we've covered a lot in just over an hour, and we're going to do other events on this actual subject as well. So Aditya, I would like to begin with you, and so can you conclude what you've basically?
So the concluding statement is that about human it's about our human nature. Humans never craved for truth. Humans became the at the top of the food chain, not because we cared about the truth. It's because we cared about our tribe. I don't know how relevant it is today, but the tribalistic nature of humans have brought us here, wherever we come from. It's because of our tribalistic nature. So we can't try to convince everyone
to our position, there will be people who will be like, this, you just can't change them. They try to be like, it's a nature where if you try to scare somebody enough, they will become part of your tribe. If you tell them that, these people are coming and they'll take your women and they'll take your jobs, and they'll like, somebody like uh Anjan Chaudhary kind of people, if you tell them that, we'll make this like, Islamic Khilafat or whatever, like, these radical, like, it's a micro minority of the population, but these are the people you'll hear the most. As very very small example, like, electric cars catch on a, like, on a percentage, on a ratio, less fire than a regular petrol or diesel car, but you'll see almost all the news of, like, cars catching fire, you'll see will be electric cars, because it's a new thing, people are scared, and this is what gets them clicks. So it's just like, uh, proving your hypothesis in your mind, and like, trying to validate it. So every single, like, electric car fire, you'll see that on television. So it's just like confirmation biases, and it will exist. We just need to come up with solution based approach to these problems, not to, like, just mysticize it, or like trying to, like, create some sort of, like, mystery out of it. That's all.
Thank you very much, Dr. Furqan.
Yeah, thank you, Shaji. I would say, like, reiterate what Aditya said, because I think that was a very good final statement, and then I agree to most of it. I think people need to be more conscious about what they do, and then what the repercussions would be in terms of like the next generations coming in, and then what they would follow. And if a certain generation has not done well, just teach them a lesson in the history books to not sort of do that again. And that is something which I think is the crux of this problem, because for like color and all, like we have seen what happened in the 60s in the US. It was like a certain community uh, fighting for their rights, with like decades and centuries of oppression and slavery. So there needs to be certain measures taken in terms of structures, and if it's not being taken, then I think these sort of events would happen over and over again, and it would not bring harmony in the society. It would bring a lot of violence, and innocent people would be sort of losing their lives. And that's what we saw, what happened in this event. One other point which I think we didn't touch much in this discussion was the misinformation that was spread through the media. One person that we highlighted was Andrew Tate, but there were other people who basically spread certain misinformation through online platforms. And I think there needs to be certain filters and responsibility, and also legal barriers should be there in terms of what information is being spread over these platforms, because they also might lead to incitement of such events. So yeah, that would be my closing statement. And thank you for this session, Shadi.
No worries. Thank you very much. I'm going to also make a few points before we close. So I think history does have a role to play, but did it have a significant role to play in the last week and a half? I think it was a combination of things. The answer is no. And we can like discuss different ethnic groups or different parts of the world where people might be more racist or less racist, but that will again be something which cannot be gauged. I think, and I would like to believe, that majority of people, regardless of what ethnic background or religion they come from, they actually do not carry these biases to an extreme level. They might do it and we saw that in the UK. Like for example, when the far right groups came out, when the ISIS people came out before, or extremist Muslims used to come out, or a white supremacist like Tommy Robinson and various groups which we had in the past, like EDL, BNP, Nick Griffin, all these people we've lived through. And I would think, and I would say it's something which the United Kingdom came past in this week and a half. And the resilience was shown, and that is only commendable, that the average person, when you saw them, when they saw that these people are on the roads, they're discriminating, they are attacking members of their community who happen to be minorities. They came out in their thousands, if not millions, and they completely outnumbered those people. So that in itself is very much commendable. Social media, again, is something which a lot of people are naming, as well as the panelists which we had today, in terms of fake news and whatnot. Again, that is something which needs to be, and there are conversations around the world in regards to how it can be like more controlled, more regulated, even though people would disagree in terms of freedom of speech and everything. But at the end of the day, this is something which needs to be regulated. Not everything. There should be consequences of what somebody speaks. If, for example, you're going to say something and that incites thousands of people upon the roads, then and it's causing public damage, it's causing harm to people, then you have to pay a penalty for that. You have to be accountable for that. And it does not matter if it's Elon Musk, who happens to be one of these big guys right now, who happens to think that he can get away with everything. He's been told very, very clearly that there will be repercussions. The Prime Minister has directly said, made that statement, that there will be repercussions for people like Elon Musk if they were to come into the UK. But with time will tell, you never know. So that's my 2 cents in it. I'll pass the microphone to Maham, and then we can go for a close. Go ahead, Maham.
All I'm going to say is that Aditya talked about human nature, tribalistic and all. I would like to add one thing, that have you ever noticed how humans are naturally violent? It doesn't take much for us to be violent, but it takes a lot to be peaceful. I once read this proverb where good people don't need the law, and bad people will always find a way around the law. And secondly, I think people, especially people like Andrew Tate, they can at least use their 2 brain cells to get the proper information instead of spreading fake news and then not be apologetic about it. Like, it's just sad how these people will egg these riots on, but then the same people will talk about peace. And that is about, I think, South Asia, especially the men who were rooting for this guy. I hope you've learned your lesson from all this situation. And secondly, I'm just going to make it very simple. You don't want us, you don't want the dark-skinned immigrants, which are mostly from the Gulf and all these countries. Go to your parliament and tell them to stop bombing them. They'll go back to they were not there. No, most of them were not there when their countries were not bombed. So stop bombing them maybe, and they'll go back to their countries, make their countries into better. Right. You cannot just destroy their homes and then expect them to just live there as well. It's just not fair. They don't have anywhere else to go. but I hope I made my point clear. But anyway, I think this was enough for today. Thank you for coming. Subscribe to our channel, like our videos, and thank you, Dr. Furqan and Aditya, for coming to our channel. And this is it, I guess. Have a nice day. Have a good evening. Stay happy. Don't be racist. Don't be bigoted. Love everyone and stay peaceful. Try. That's it. Thank you for coming. Thank you for listening. Khuda Hafiz and goodbye.